tank mode at this point, and I'm already looking at tankathon of scenarios of like, all right, we need the Cardinals to win another game. We need the Patriots for sure to beat us. We'll get to all the tank stuff on a later podcast, but that's where my head's at now. Anyways, moving on from the ref stuff, the other big thing to come out of this game was obviously they made another switch at quarterback. And I think, people who listen to these full podcasts and don't just like look at tweets or, it seems like there were two camps of Zach people at the beginning of the season. And I was very much in the camp of we need to make a change at quarterback because it's inexcusable that you would try nothing. They tried something. I'll be the first to say, hand up, it was worse. Trevor Siemian, 3 fumbles. Tim Boyle not willing to throw the ball to Garrett Wilson, which Zach Wilson was like kind of figuring out how to do. It's just an abysmal product and an indictment on the coaching staff. But I do want to like point out the nuance that I am happy that they were exhausting all options. The fact that Zach is the best one of them is more an indictment on A, Nathaniel Hackett, but or I should say B, Nathaniel Hackett, but A, Joe Douglas for leaving the cupboard that bare when Mike White was an in-house option that like we had on the roster last year. You could have signed him for the Mecole Hardman money. We had, Gardner Minshew was available in the league. Jacoby Brissett went to Washington. We've had this discussion a million times. And I do think that like, I'm willing to say that Zach was by far the best option and who should be the quarterback of the team moving forward for the rest of this year. But the fact that the cupboard was that bare, I'm happy that they tried something, but they just proved, Robert Saleh just proved what a shit job Joe Douglas did setting him up in case one thing were to fail this season.
Yeah, I'm going to try to measure my words here because this is a hot button, right? I'm going to hit the Mike White thing first. I didn't expect you to bring that up, but I'm glad you did. Because I was talking with somebody last week and I was kind of working through it as I was talking to this person, and I was like, Mike White, that was the domino that fell the wrong way that resulted in all of this happening. Right from the jump, my preferred plan last year was like keep Mike White, keep Zach Wilson, then figure it out. Go get Aaron Rodgers. And I was hoping that both of them could sit behind Aaron Rodgers and both of them could learn. And maybe one of them would turn into something, right? But if we go back and we think about it, if they do just sign Mike White, right? He's in the building. People like him. He knows kind of what's going on with the offense. He's able to run it efficiently. He wanted to be here, I think, in some regards, right? Like he also is from Florida and he wanted to go to Miami. That's fine. But like, I think probably right at the end of last season, he would have told you he wanted to stay here. If you just get that done, get that out of the way, and then you go big game hunting and go out and get a quarterback and whoever it is, right? Then when Aaron Rodgers wants to bring all his bags with him and says, hey, sign my man Timmy, right? We could say, best we could do is a little bit of preseason film and, give him an opportunity to sign with another team, right? Because we already have these 2 guys under contract and we're not going to carry 4 probably. So like, sure, we'll bring your guy in, but he's not staying here and, we'll give him some film, right? And if that happens, we're never in this Boyle-Siemian spin cycle. We have a legitimate backup. Maybe Mike White comes in game 1. Maybe they still go with Zach Wilson. I don't know. But maybe Mike White comes in game 1 or at least game 2 if they had him as the emergency QB. And we never get in this mess in the first place. So I think like Mike White might have been like the biggest domino of the offseason that didn't go the way we needed it to go. And we're not talking about any of this stuff, right? Because they did sign a legitimate backup. And so frustrating to think about, really frustrating to think about. As far as coming back to Siemian, like I get it. I get wanting a spark. I argued against it because, and I'm not gonna get on here and like take a victory lap. That's not what this is about because there is no victory. Everybody sucks. All 3 of them suck, right? So I get wanting the spark, but that the whole spark theory operates under the assumption that all this team needed was good quarterback play, and it's everybody has loved to say that for 2 years, but I'm not sure it's true. I think we've seen that it's not true. at this point. And so, like I just from the standpoint of who is the most physically gifted quarterback on the roster, it was always Zach. Like it was never a question. And so, you look at Trevor Siemian, and everybody was out there saying like he ran an NFL offense. He was, he did okay, and like he didn't. He didn't. First of all, he got cut in Bengals camp this year when Joe Burrow was hurt. They knew Joe Burrow was hurt, and they cut Siemian loose for Jake Browning, who is playing well tonight, right? But he's a rookie. So if Siemian was anything worth keeping, the Bengals would have kept him, because regardless of the fact that Jake Browning's playing well tonight, like if you really think Burrow might miss some time, you're going to keep Siemian if he's worth anything. And they didn't, right? The only thing Trevor Siemian has ever done in the NFL is go barely over 500 with a Super Bowl team that won with, like I said on last week, the corpse of Peyton Manning, right? He was barely over 500 the next year with that team. He was under 60% completion rate that year, and for his entire career. Every other stop he's been at under 60% completion. And just for fun, while I was looking through all this stuff, I started looking at completion rate every year and like, where's the top? Where's the bottom? What does it mean if you're about under 60, right? Every year there's about 1 to 3 quarterbacks that are under 60% for the year, and they're all terrible. And by the way, the last 6 years, the primary Jets quarterback has been under 60% every single year, whether it's Zach Wilson or Sam Darnold. The last time somebody wasn't was McCown in 2017. So that was a frustrating thing to see. And the other thing about that year in Denver with Siemian that everybody likes to point to and say he's an NFL quarterback, Paxton Lynch played 2 games that year, and Paxton Lynch put up similar numbers, similar completion percentage, similar rating, similar TD to interception ratio, similar win-loss percentage. The next year when the roster started to deteriorate, Trevor Siemian started to get hurt, all the numbers went down. He's done nothing since then. He hasn't won a game since then. He didn't win a game in New Orleans. He didn't win a game in Chicago. He didn't win a game when he had a cup of coffee with us and he got hurt immediately. And he didn't win yesterday, right? Like, the guy has done nothing in his entire career. And so this argument has frustrated me from the beginning. You can make the argument that it should have never been this way. That's fine, right? But the spark thing was really driving me nuts. And I texted you during the game yesterday that like, is everybody happy? Like, can we go back to the best talent, the tallest of the 3 bad quarterbacks that we have? Like, can we go back to that one now? Is everybody happy? And I'm not saying it's good. At no point in this argument have I ever been saying that this was about development for Zach Wilson or he's the future or we have to see if he's the future. This was about treading water. And I think to not put the best player out there, regardless of the fact that all 3 are bad, to not put your best one out there, I don't know. I get where you're coming from. I just don't like it.
So I'll say the counter argument as someone who like wanted the spark is like, yes, I am happy, because the reason that we were calling for it was not simply like, oh my God, we know for a fact that Trevor Siemian or Tim Boyle is better than Zach Wilson. And like, I know there's a lot of revisionist history going on Twitter of people who did say exactly that. But I'm saying from my perspective, and like, you can go back and listen to the tapes, you can listen to me and Paul discuss this. My argument was always, we're not getting the results we need to from Zach. And every other position on the roster, if that were the case, there would be a change made. And it seemed like a lot of the messaging, or at least a lot of the leaks and the things coming out from the team, was like, we're not making a change because Zach is too fragile, or like, we don't want to mess with what we have with Zach. And none of those felt like a good enough reason to make the change. I think there was a part of Robert Saleh that very much wanted to come out and say, hey, Joe Douglas gave me a bunch of shit, and like, that's why I'm not playing these guys. They all suck. But he was never going to say that. And so the only thing that you have to do at that point is like prove it. And so to answer your question, like, are we happy? No, I mean, happy would be like one of these guys actually being able to show something. Right. Am I satisfied with the process now? Yes. So now I think there is nothing left to do but to turn back to Zach. which brings us to today's news. I know I have some other things that we wanted to talk about. They're not nearly as important given the most recent news of the day. So let's just jump right into it. There was a report that came out today from The Athletic, primarily Diana Rossini and Zach Blatt. This has been, debated, and we'll get into the nitty gritty of it. But the long and short of it was, at the time of the report, that the coaching staff wanted to turn back to Zach. Zach had made his feelings be known, whether it was to the coaching staff or just to someone else, and the coaching staff found out about it, or reporters found out about it, is what's kind of up for debate. But most people, and I trust, the reporters on the beat to not drastically fuck this up this bad. Most people believe that at some point there was sentiment from Zach Wilson that, like, fuck that, I'm not going back out there anymore. You guys benched me, deal with it. Since then, Robert Saleh has come out and said, like, I spoke to Zach. He told me he wants to play. I don't know what anyone else was talking about, but in this moment, like, he's told me he wants to play, and we're still making that decision. That sets the table of where we're at now. My number one question is, if this is true, that Zach was basically told, hey, we want you to be the starter, and he said, no, I'm not doing it. There's basically two schools of thought right now in Jets Twitter. One is like, well, can you blame him? Like, look at what they did. They benched him. They putting him in a shitty situation. There's basically a no win from Zach. The other side is, dude, like, you're not going to be on the team next year. You're playing for your football career. If you want to stand by your tape right now, good fucking luck. And also, you were drafted number 2 overall. You're making all this money. The team wants you to play football. Your job is to play football. Get out there and lead. So, Paul, I'll throw it over to you. Which side of that debate are you
on? That's a tough question to ask me. I'm just gonna answer it directly right out of the gate. Neither, because I think both are true. I get both sides. I really do. Like, as a fan, no fan is ever going to co-sign something like that if it's true, right? And all of this has to be repeatedly qualified with if it's true. I think the only time somebody could get away with something like that is like what we saw with Derek Carr last year, where, like, hey, we all know this is over, shutting it down, right? And he had done enough for that fan base over the course of a long period of time where I think those fans...
The one caveat to the Derek Carr situation is, like, he was in a scenario where, and I guess Zach is kind of in a similar situation, but Derek Carr was in a scenario where the Raiders, if he got injured, owed him like a shit ton of more injury guaranteed money. So, like, they didn't want to play him either. And so I know I see the parallels, but I also don't think that, like, Zach's rookie contract is fully guaranteed whether we cut him tomorrow or not, to my understanding. So, like, it's not like the Jets are in a situation where if we play him and it doesn't go well, like, we're screwed. Like, the Jets owe him whatever they owe him, no matter if Zach gets hurt or not. So it's slightly a little bit of a different situation, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, it's definitely not a perfect comparison. I was just struggling to think of something. Like, my point is that fans are never going to accept something like that. Like, look at the Green Bay fans. They don't give Aaron Carter, or I'm sorry, I don't know where Aaron Carter came from. They don't give. I think I'm looking at the screen, and there was a Carter on the screen. Whatever. They don't give Aaron Rodgers an inch on anything. And how much did he do for them, right? So fans are never going to accept that sentiment if it's true. Of, like, no, I don't want to go out there. I don't want to get hurt. I'm done here. You guys were mean to me. Like, it's never going to be acceptable. The other side of that coin is just from a strictly human being perspective. He's a 23